All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Panther Exploration Project exhibition virtually. We look forward to hearing your reflections on your project. So we'll go ahead and start with Tony. Take it away.
Hello, I'm Tony Asvich, and I did my project on Rachel Carson and banning DDT. So when I went through the planning phase of my project, I've always been really curious about like environmental issues and such. So I decided to like base it off topics on that, and I found Rachel Carson, who seemed like a pretty interesting lady, who had a very influential career, and honestly has a very big impact on our world today. And I had originally planned on doing a documentary. However, I realized that a documentary really wasn't for me, and I didn't particularly know much about making a documentary. So eventually I switched to a paper, which was far more within like my skill range and something I knew how to do. And my research process was really extensive. I sort of underestimated in the beginning how much effort it would take to write this essay because you need a lot of primary sources. So most of my research, after I'd gotten the background on who Rachel Carson was and what she did, was just going through databases and finding resources and cartoons and newspapers that showed evidence of what she had done. But reflecting on the whole process overall, it was pretty fun. I learned a lot about like what makes environmental policy what it is today, which is something I'd like to know more about in the future. And it was honestly surprising to me that the environmental movement is so recent. Like I thought there was like more prelude to it, but it really only started in the 1970s under the Nixon administration. And the first Earth Day was in the 1970s, and for some reason I'd always thought it was a much more extensive background. And that's my project.
I'm older than the environmental movement.
That's wild.
Think about that for a second.
Thanks for sharing, Tony. And it definitely sounds like you hit a topic that is of genuine interest to you. And having read through your paper, I could definitely, tell that you have a passion for this project. So thank you very much. Eli, you want to take it away next, please?
I focused on the earlier stages of the environmental movement. So I know you said it didn't really start until the 70s, which is kind of true, but there were people in Theodore Roosevelt's administration, and I chose to do my project on Gifford Pinchot because because I've been interested in conservation and the study of the natural world for a while. I chose to do a documentary because it would give me an opportunity to be creative in a way that I haven't really been before. And to begin my research, I started like very vague with just looking at a couple of articles by the Forest Service, because Gifford Pinchot was the first chief of the United States Forest Service. And from those articles, I found a bunch of other primary sources that I looked through, and that was my beginning of research. And then from there, I just found additional sources to fill in gaps in my knowledge. And Gifford Pinchot was the first Forest Service chief, and he worked closely with Roosevelt. So he was pretty directly diplomatic in the beginning of the forest movement, or like the forestry movement, conservation of natural resources. So that's pretty much the synopsis.
And just as a point of reflection, could you share there, please?
In hindsight, I definitely underestimated the work that a documentary would have. And the research was actually probably the most simple aspect. It wasn't every aspect of making a documentary is time consuming, which I underestimated because I tended to do research and work in big chunks instead of splitting it up a lot. So I would have done that in hindsight. But yeah.
All right, thank you very much for sharing, Eli, and we will go over to Avery at this point.
Okay, I did my project on the Stonewall riots and the debate for LGBTQ rights. And so I chose this topic because I was always interested in the civil rights movement, but I realized that textbooks and just like the curriculum in lots of schools doesn't really encapsulate other minority struggles as much. Like the Black movement or the civil rights movement is definitely very important, but it doesn't really go over everyone else that is struggling. And sorry, uh, they. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. Don't worry about it. It's no big deal. I have two of them at home. They do the same thing to me.
So I was interested in the gay rights movement, and I thought that would be a good. It was just an interesting topic to me. And so I started my research by reading a few books on it that we bought. So one of them was by David Carter, I think. That was just a basic background of it. And then the other one was a firsthand account of the riots from a person who was actually involved in it. So that was really interesting. And when I first started it, I did not really realize, like, I knew it would take like a long time and a lot of research, but it just seemed like it was more than it seemed at first. And I think I definitely would, if I was going to like do this again, I would like spread out the work more, like Eli said, kind of, to make it more manageable. So I guess that's my project.
All right. Thank you very much, Avery. And we'll now move over to Hannah and Tessa.
So we did our project on the Social Security Act, and I think we're both just really interested in like the Great Depression, but we wanted to like zoom in on it and like get a closer look on something. So we went with the Social Security Act of the New Deal.
Yeah, we kind of started by just picking some stuff off the list and looking them up, and it just kind of piqued my interest because I didn't know much about the New Deal. I just knew it was a big, complicated thing, so I wanted to learn more about it. And we originally were going to do an exhibit board, but then we decided on a documentary because it fits the themes a lot better, since it takes a lot of, it's the debate aspect kind of takes explaining in a way that wouldn't be very presentable with just a board and facts and stuff. But we started our research we started with the New Deal in general, and then narrowed it down to the Social Security Act and welfare. And I think we got most of our research, actually, we got 3 interviews, which was really crazy. And they were all from people who knew what they were talking about. So that was really helpful.
And then as we were like making the project, we wish we also like would have spread it out more because we left a lot of it for the end. But it was also like a learning curve when we had to like do the voiceovers and like learn how to use iMovie and that kind of stuff.
I just had a follow-up for you guys. Hannah, you mentioned that you had 3 interviews. Who were the interviews with?
So one is from Dr. Berkowitz, I think is how you say his name. But teaches at Columbia University, and he's also a published author on the Social Security Act. And then we had another interview from Dr. Franz at UND, and he teaches presidential U.S. history, I think, and like politics, presidential politics, actually. And then we had Dr. Drake from IU, and I don't remember what she teaches. I don't remember. Do you remember, Tessa?
She teaches like welfare and just like literally about this like topic, like the New Deal.
Yeah.
So that's great. And then I just have a final sort of reflection question that anybody could answer. Since you were doing your NHD project for the personal exploration project, and I heard the theme of debate and diplomacy mentioned. Could any of you speak to either challenges or successes that you had in relating your topic to the theme this year for debate and diplomacy?
The debate portion. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Tony. And then we'll go to Eli.
The debate portion was really easy for my topic since it was such an obvious debate, because she kind of had, Rachel Carson has such a strong argument that the chemical industry was so a part of like daily life that it was really easy for the debate to be seen. It was a little bit harder for the diplomacy, but then I realized that there were so many policies that were created about the 1970s, so all that diplomatic action was easy to like talk about after I found it.
Eli, go ahead.
The environment that my project or topic took place in was already very political, so the advocacy part that my person focused on was both covering debate over the topic that he was advocating for and diplomacy in the methods that he used in order to advocate for it. So that was a major success in choosing my topic.
Yeah, go ahead, Avery.
I think my experience was similar to Tony's, because the debate aspect was pretty obvious. But for the diplomacy, I wasn't really sure which aspect to focus on. But I realized like I could use like their attempts at keeping the peace failed. And so they resorted to violence, and that was like how it involved diplomacy.
Go ahead, Hannah.
Yeah, for our topic, it was pretty easy because the whole thing is the big debate over too much government interference or not enough, and that in itself has a lot of smaller debates within it. So it was pretty easy to do that, and kind of like everyone else, the diplomacy was a little harder, but we focused some on like the acts themselves were kind of compromises, and in getting it passed through Senate and constitutionality and stuff like that. But we focused more on the debate aspect rather than diplomacy.
I'm not that surprised about the way all of you responded. I would agree that the debate portion over the issue was probably the easier connection to make, and the diplomacy aspect a little bit more of the challenge. So, trying to find that connection between the two, I'm sure stretched you a little bit. So, Mr. Cooper or Mr. Rascosi, do either of you have anything else to add or to ask at this point?
No, I think you guys all did a wonderful job.
Yeah, they did a great job.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if there is nothing else to ask at this point, then we want to thank you all for taking the time to participate. And at this point, this would conclude our virtual presentation for 2022 Panther Exploration Project. Thanks again for all your efforts, and we will see you soon.